I believe that you share my view that very strongly. I believe that in all of these years later, after we published our book, it's still state of the art. It's still, if you want to be great at software development, then this is the way to be great at it, it seems to me. It doesn't seem much argument. First, do you agree with that? And what is it that you think that continuous delivery brings to this picture that we've been painting and helps with to hold that position?
Yeah, I mean, it is... obviously, I'm very likely to be subject to confirmation bias here. But
yeah, me too.
I will say, that I don't think there's anything we wrote in the continuous delivery book that's substantive that's actually wrong. I think it's all stood the test of time. The DevOps movement has been incredibly successful, and continuous delivery is a big part of that. Although, I will say I think a lot of people independently came up with the same idea. So I know that it's not, I know you're not going to disagree with me, but I think it still is worth saying that there's a lot of other people who contributed to this and came up with similar ideas. And I know that and agree with me that a lot of this came from XP and Agile. So we kind of, both of us, built on the shoulders of giants in that respect. But yeah, like I think it's all right. And the research program that Dora, Nicole Forsgren, my co-founder and the CEO of Dora, and the chief scientist, she did all the kind of scientific part of that. That has really demonstrated it to be true. And I know both of us have worked in so many different industries and with so many people, and this stuff works. It just does. It makes things better. It makes software more reliable. It makes it higher quality. It makes you faster at delivering it. And it's just a better way of working. So that's incredibly gratifying to have been part of that story, I think.
And absolutely, you're right. It's not that we invented this way of working. I think we gave it. We helped apply a language to it and pulled some thoughts together, but they weren't all our thoughts. In the early days of the book, I remember we started off quite a few of the people that you mentioned earlier that were on your team and a couple of others. We planned for the book to be a bit of a collection of essays from all of us, and you and me were the only ones that did any writing.
We were the only ones left standing at the end.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, originally I remember I was writing it with a couple of other people, and then I found out you were writing a book on the same topic. And then we kind of pinged each other and worked out, and kind of it was early enough along that we were able to combine forces. But I also remember when it came out, I got someone who's a friend of Eric Ries was really outraged that we'd released a book on this topic when Eric Ries had been talking about this, and Tim Fitz as well, who wrote the continuous deployment blog post. And it was just clear that a lot of other people had similar thoughts and were moving in a similar direction.
Yeah, I often talk about continuous delivery as an approach as being kind of Gen 2 extreme programming. So I think that one of the things that from our context, the ThoughtWorks context of that part of the story, it seems to me that what ThoughtWorks was doing was doing extreme programming on a bigger scale than it was normal for extreme programming at the time. So we were kind of pushing at the boundaries and finding the squeaky parts of the, that was a little bit hard to deal with. So I think that we just, I don't think there was anything that was wrong with extreme programming. It's just that we kind of talked about that bigger picture of doing it on different scales, maybe in different circumstances.
Yeah, I mean, I remember that when we got the Jolt Award, I remember there was the review of the book that was part of the Jolt Awards judging process basically said that, we just took all these problems that people thought were incredibly hard and just were like, and this is how you solve it. And I think that for me was what we were able to, I mean, and in my case, because I was too young to know any better, I think, was just that, these were all solvable problems. Yeah. And if you just took a kind of methodical, systematic approach and a bit of creativity, these were all soluble problems. And one of my favorite examples of that was blue-green deployments, which I think actually Dan North was the guy who came up with that idea. You can correct me if I'm wrong about that. But this idea that, we had these Solaris boxes that we were talking about, and it was a weekend-long release process. And he just had this idea. He was like, well, why don't we install the next version in production at the same time? And we were all like, what are you talking about, Dan? And he said, well, listen, we can just stand up the entire stack on a different place in the file system, listening on a different ports on the same computer. And that's what we did. We basically, installed WebLogic twice on different places in the file. And we had to, the installer wouldn't do that for you. So what we did is we ran the installer on an empty Linux box and then diffed the file system after the installer had ran and reverse engineered what it did and checked all the files into CVS and basically installed by checking out of CVS into a particular place on the file system, and then just having variables that we inserted using a bash script for what ports it was listening on and all the other things that were changed between the two installs of that, and then doing the same thing for Apache and all the other parts of the stack. So basically, you had your production system running on one install, and then you deployed the next version to the other install that you had, and you could basically, smoke test that, and then release was just pointing the load balancer at the front end to the new installs ports versus the old install ports, and then rolling back was just changing the load balancer back to the other set of ports. And then your new live version, your old live version becomes your staging version to deploy your next install to. And, we weren't using Terraform or containers or any of this crap. We were just using Linux and CVS and, some kind of smart ideas about how you can get things working. And that for me is the essence of continuous delivery. It's just problem solving.
I think going back to something that you said earlier, which kind of resonated with me, and the way that quite a lot of the way that I think about continuous delivery, it's applying the kind of problem solving that good software developers apply to solving software development problems to software development. It's the same. It's turtles all the way down, really. It's just being able to apply that kind of logical engineering style of reasoning, of solving the problems, going through, trying stuff out, see what works, make progress in small steps. I remember I was playing slight interference with the client, as I recall, for some of the stuff of the project that you were talking about. And I remember coming in at some points to there, and you and your team and Dan being excitedly telling me that you'd been able to deploy using this technique. I think it was something like somewhere between 4 and 6 hours it was taking you to prep to deploy the software, and you said, it just took us 2 seconds to switch over with the blue-green deployment, and been absolutely delighted, and way fewer problems as a result of the strategy.
Yeah, it was huge, and I still get people coming up to me saying that that technique has changed, meant that they don't have to go in at evenings and weekends anymore. So
and so much of this is about. I would think, I've got my science t-shirt on today, but I would think of this as kind of the practical application of that kind of thing, science style thinking, engineering, of just trying to say, it's not about my preferences, it's not about what I like or what I don't like, it's about what works. And that's it. And I'm going to try out the stuff that works, and as much as I might like working on a branch with my headphones on, that doesn't work as well, so I'm not going to do it. I'm going to do something else.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And, I would obviously be, a bit bummed if someone showed that all the stuff we're talking about was actually not the best way to do it. But I'd also be happy that people had found a better way of working. And, I remember being blown away by these ideas when I encountered them. Yeah. So it's not like I was born knowing this stuff. It's stuff that I've just like, wow, that, I remember reading the XP book in 2000. Yeah. When I first started and thinking, well, this is a load of bollocks. And, and then 2 years later I joined ThoughtWorks and I worked with people who worked in that way. Yeah. And I was like, holy crap, this is amazing.
Yeah.
But, without that experience, I probably would have continued to think it was a load of bollocks. And so,
Yeah.
I just want to, for me, a big part of it is just passing that on and being like,
Yes.
I want everyone else to have had that experience.
Yes, me too. And that's a large part of the job satisfaction that I get from my work and the stuff that we, that we did with the book and so on. But is trying to help people to see what I think is a better way. And if it's not a better way, show me where the reasoning's wrong. Show me what works better, and I will thank you for it, and I'll adopt it and talk about it. So I'm not precious about this. This is like you. There'll be a little bit of hubris. I'll be slightly disappointed if I've got something wrong, but I'll also be grateful for learning where I'm wrong, because that's what I want to know, and that's the engineering mindset, surely.